Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching this. I am CT Folly Entropy, but you can just call me Entropy. I said it again. Whenever you are listening to this. Anyway, I didn't post one for Friday because I'm only gonna post things or like talk about it in an episode if it's actually worth talking about, because otherwise the content I kind of went over was fairly bland, and it was just kind of some extra details that I ended up having just to do for homework, but I'll give a quick recap of it anyway. So when it comes to Erasmus and the Praise of Folly, there was just like a part 3 to the introduction, and I find it very unnecessary. I wasn't going to do 3 full episodes of just pure introduction. So actually I have a bit of material on the actual book itself and not the introduction written by someone who has lack of sentence structure. Essentially, the only details he continued to give from there was that Erasmus, with also writing the Praise of Folly, was also trying to put together a entire Greek New Testament out of Greek manuscripts that he has found, and this was kind of a big problem for the church because the church was doing a lot of things that in the eyes of people like the Reformist and Erasmus was very corrupt, but they had no way of actually like invalidating their practices. With having the Bible like accessible to the public, that would really be the judge on whether they were reliable as a church to have the truth at hand. The process that Erasmus went through with making it was kind of rough. He couldn't ever really obtain all of the manuscripts he wanted to create the Greek New Testament, and even yet he made this horrible mistake because the church at the time had the Latin Vulgate. That was the Bible version that they kind of read out of. He translated from the Latin Vulgate into Greek. At some point, the Greek was translated into Latin, and he's translating the Latin back to Greek, which is definitely the possibilities of there being just errors and things being embellished is just incredibly high. And even later, he shows his he was like, I was stupid for doing that. Otherwise, that was even kind of it. There was other details concerning just more settings, but it's not even worth talking about. It was incredibly boring. I skim read the entire thing, but we actually have things to talk about in the book itself, Praise of Folly. So essentially, it starts out with Praise of Folly. She's just a jester, and she comes out to an audience and explains herself, and she says that I am Folly, and I will claim to be nothing else but folly, all hypocrisy and all. After explaining a bit of like who she is, she also gives a bit of background to her youth, which I think is, and of course it's made up, but it's an entire allegory with names I think are from other Greek literature and some type of mythology. I had no clue what was going on there. It was filled with names, but I'm going to assume it's not the most detrimental, whether I understood that section or not. But anyway, she continues saying that she is the happiness that is in youth, and she's the happiness in later years. Essentially, she's just saying, ignorance is bliss, and I am the one that brings that. To the youth who are young and innocent and have not been corrupted yet by the world, and she says that, and I bring forgetfulness to the older people to forget everything that has made them lose their innocence, and I will make them youthful again. Now, I actually have met people who do take the ignorance is bliss to heart, and I'm gonna tell you right now why I think that's absolute bullcrap. So, for one, it's appealing to people because the image of finding bliss and happiness through just needing to not strive for information because of the reality of things are just harmful to innocence. Like, that makes sense why it's appealing, but the thing is that it's inevitable that you will get hurt by and be forced to face realities. When you are ignorant, you're unaware to dangers, you become a victim. Just because you believe you just don't know of the existence of some harmful information that would ruin your bliss doesn't mean that you won't be affected by it. You're still part of it. You still exist in the exact same world with all of these supposed evils and things that would ruin your innocence. And even yet, this is the main point that I bring up when against the ignorance is bliss thing, is that what do you know? Oh goodness. How do you know what to be ignorant of so that you can receive bliss? If you learn something and you realize, oh, I know this now, but I still have bliss, then you realize I could have lived blissfully being ignorant of this, but you wouldn't have known that. If ignorance was bliss, you would never know what makes you blissful anyway. So then you don't know what bliss is. So then you ended up having to be knowledgeable anyway to receive bliss. And the only way that you wouldn't ruin your innocence when you learn about harmful information is just not to let it emotionally affect you. But if you continue to believe that ignorance is bliss, you continue to leave yourself mentally and emotionally vulnerable to just the realities of this world. And now really, I could have kept this in a very short form podcast, even one of the shorts. But if I even wanted to continue talking, which there isn't much else to talk about, I guess I'll give actually even more context, not to praise of Folly, but I started off with a bit of the Book of Ethics by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, so I suppose I read more out of that, and I could talk about that. So essentially the only thing that was kind of new was he gave an explanation of the difference between Jesus and the Pharisees being a very good example of what folly is, which I suppose is actually a really good correlation, where they are hypocrites in themselves, where they sit and judge everybody else thinking that they are somehow not sinful as well. They only say and they never do. A big thing that Bonhoeffer continues in the next chapter saying is that to prove that you are in the will of God and that you are using God as the standard of knowing what's good and evil, you need to show it. And it could be to prove it to yourself, because otherwise you would be a hypocrite. He shows that not only learning the knowledge about the will of God is necessary, but it says that doing the will, they go hand in hand. He gives the examples of, the Pharisees, where they're all talk and they don't do. But at the same time, he gives the example of when Jesus is over at Martha's house and Mary is there as well, and Mary is just sitting in front of Jesus listening to him talk and listening to his teachings, while Martha is off cleaning and stuff. And he condones Martha, saying that you are busying yourself with what's not important right now, while Mary is taking full advantage of this opportunity of listening to my word. Now, that could almost sound like a contradiction, but it's not. You need both, and that's really the point. They go hand in hand. There's a verse, and let me find it. I wrote it somewhere on one of my assignments. I'll find it in a moment here. Right. It was Matthew 7:21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, 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 shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven. So, this is also the context of the people who came up to Jesus and they said, we did so many miracles and we casted out demons in your name. And Jesus said, I do not know you, get behind me. Which could be very troubling to some people, because it's like they were doing good in the name of Jesus. Why is he casting them to the side? Because at the same time, even though they did things, which they had no things to do things, but it's clear that there was a motive that was not of God, but it was clear that God was still working good things through their works, even if they themselves were not doing it to bring glory to God, but to themselves. And to listen to God and do his will to bring glory to him is just as much necessary as doing it in the first place. And that's kind of this entire point. You know what? Yeah, I suppose that was actually worth talking about. I don't know why I didn't think that was at first. Whatever, it's fine. And to catch you up even more, I brought up a bit more about government and why it's necessary to have this universal standard for it to really ever work, because otherwise it will be moral contradiction and things won't align and will fall apart. Well, the next part that I did with government was explaining a lot of the different types of government and kind of a beginning history of like the first types of government, which in the curriculum that we're going through, which is just called Under God, was the family, was the system of the family, where the husband is the head and along with the wife at his side, and then the kids, which are like the disciples, which in a comparison to the government would be like, you know, the lead representative, and then all the citizens under him. So yeah, there we go. I caught you all up. I'll be making some leadway on the other podcast, the more official one. I'm planning on releasing something definitely by the end of this week. I just have some very demanding things with school as of right now, just with tests. So otherwise, this is just kind of more of a quick check, just a quick checkup, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.